Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I am TJ Whitehead, Powers Taken Not Given, joined for, I don't know, second, third, fourth time, who knows, by Cory Bradford. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm good, TJ. How you been?
Been all right. Been all right. Just well into this new year. I noticed, you remember back in the old days when you used to write down the year and you would do the previous year or whatever.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen much anymore now that things are computerized and everything.
Yeah.
Everything's all digital. But it's like, oh yeah, that's I don't write checks anymore or something. You almost never write out the year. So that's kind of a bonus. For things just keep getting worse in society. So you gotta look for those small victories when you find them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I remember the last time that was a major issue for me was maybe when it was still like two zeros in the year and it was like 2007 and it's like, oh, I'm writing 2007 instead of 2008. Like, I think that was the last time that was an issue. But I think I was writing something the other day that did involve the year, and I did accidentally put 24 in it instead of 25. So that did come up with me one time so far this year. But like you said, it's not something that people deal with on a daily basis that much anymore because everything is just so computerized.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day I saw this article about technology and everything.
Yeah.
I saw this article saying that last year there were 13 million more single people in the United States than 2019. And of course, a lot of it goes to the pandemic.
Yeah.
But in my mind, we've been on this course long before COVID. Long before COVID, we've been on track for this. And I was thinking about how our entire society is set up to focus on the individual and not the community, as much as possible. Like we talk about third spaces a lot and how they no longer exist. And for those of you wondering what third spaces are, those are locations in which you can exist with no expectation of spending money, and how we get fewer and fewer of those every day. It's illegal to build a business within most housing areas. So you can't walk to a grocery store or a laundromat or to a gym or whatever. You got to hop in your car by yourself, drive there, drive back by yourself. And like, when we talk about how society is not structured to help communities, like, think about it, like, folks, how many of your neighbors can you name right now? Everyone, how many of them can you name? And when's the last time you talked to them? And when would you even get the opportunity? You never really get to, the only time you see them is when they're heading to their car, and they'll see you heading back to your house or heading to that's the only time you see them. And like, that's the way our society is headed. Most people, they get up, they go to work, come home, and the only time they leave the house is when they have to go buy something, which you don't even need to leave the house to do anymore if you really don't want to. So like, we can either restructure our society and our economy in a way that favors community over individuals, or we can look forward to a future where no one hangs out with their family, friends, neighbors, associates, no one dates, no one gets married, no one has kids. We're heading there sooner rather than later. This is not going to get better anytime soon.
No, it's not. I mean, you bring up a lot of very interesting points. First of all, I don't know any of my neighbors' names at right now. I know one. My like one is right next door to me, and that's only because I keep getting his packages mistakenly sent to my house, and I have to go over there to give them to him. But that's the only one I know, and I have exchanged numbers with him in case something happens to either of our houses. So that's like one. But other than that, I don't know a single other person, and I only see people, like you said, when they're getting in their car. I don't see them out really in the yard as much anymore. As for this situation with people not, being married and obviously not having relationships as much, I think really a lot of that has to do with internet dating and online dating. I was seeing some statistics. I think it was a graph that was showing the main way in which most people used to meet. I think you've seen this. You've probably seen this. Yeah. And it was basically saying 50 years ago, most people would meet like at a church, at school, maybe at a bar, some like a third space that you're just referring to, some area where they're just together, as a community. And now it's like well over, I don't know the exact number, but I think it was like well over 60-70% of people who are meeting online. And online dating, I mean, I met my wife online over a decade ago. We lived in the same area, but I met her online. So online dating, I think, creates these weird expectations for dating. And the way people meet online, especially like it used to be back in the day, you'd have like an online profile and you could try to like explain who you are. But then I think when Tinder came along, it was just swipe, 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 swipe. Like you were really just basing people off of looks and looks alone.
Yeah.
And that made for a lot of lonely people. And I think that a lot of other dating apps that came after Tinder really tried to mimic that really convenient, swiping, basically just turning dating into like a video game.
Yeah.
And I think that really, when people actually, even if they got to the stage where they actually started talking and meeting up, they really found that, oh, I only really swipe with this person because I like the way they look, but we don't have anything in common. We don't even like the same things. I really don't like this person. And I think that's just made for a lot of lonely people. And I think it really goes to that. But I agree, lack of third spaces, lack of community is a huge part of it. But I think the internet dating has really made it the internet dating experience has really just made it 1,000 times worse.
This isn't a topic we even plan to talk about, but this is great because I have a lot to say about that too. This is the chart that Cory was referring to here. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger.
How did you find that so quickly?
Shoot. Huh? Oh, well, I found it while you were talking. Actually, I was looking for it. Yeah.
This is the exact chart. This is it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it shows like in 1980, of course, almost nobody met with online dating. That's going to be the red line. But now it's well over 50%. And the blue line is through friends. And then the rest of them is family, work, bar, school, neighbors. And those have all been plummeting with like an inverse relationship with online dating. And while now, like I remember back in the day, let me see this chart here. In the early 2000s, it was still kind of embarrassing to tell people you met online. It's like, what you met her online? Okay, kind of weird. It seemed like an act of desperation back in those days because it was still in its infancy. But the online dating thing has changed it a lot. And it's weird becoming an adult and realizing that other adults are asking you for advice. That's always a strange moment when you realize that, like, oh, wow, okay, I've got people who take my opinion pretty seriously. And so when I talk to like younger guys, like younger men, I talk about this, I tell them, don't do online dating. Just don't do it. I really do. I say it's not good for you. I can't speak from the woman's perspective, but one, like you mentioned with online dating, I think it's particularly bad advice for men to try to do it, most men at least, for like 1,000 different reasons. Like, number one, dating apps are predominantly men already. It's like 3/4 of the customer base of online dating is men. So you're already starting with the odds stacked against you. Second, like Cory mentioned, online dating is a primarily visual medium. And fellas, I hate to break it to you, but that is not going to be your strong point 98% of the time. Like, you know how good looking you have to be as a dude to be considered a good looking dude. Like, it is and not just like, oh, you dress well, you look nice, you look. I was like wow, like a head turner. Like, so, oh, that's a good looking dude. Almost no guys fit that description. So, and made worse is the fact that unlike women, guys don't go around taking pictures of each other, and they don't take pictures of themselves. So if you got to upload photos from you, they're going to be pretty shitty. Odds are, unless you get like professional photography, it's going to look pretty bad. So they're going to see you sitting there in your making bacon sweatshirt or whatever, just swipe left every single time. That's not going to work out for you. But then even if, let's say you have a good photo and you catch some girl's eye, now that's not going to be enough. Like, women are not like you guys. Okay. That is not going to be enough for them. They need to see a little bit more. So then they're going to see what you have in your profile. Now your written profile can stand out if you're funny, if you're clever and interesting. And chances are you're none of those either. Like, really, that's like, I'm just like, I'm not being mean, but most people are not funny, right? Like, they're average. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being average. And you're probably not all that clever. You're probably average there too. So you got a bunch of strikes against you. Don't do that. But the number one reason has nothing to do with how bad it is for you or how bad your odds are. I think that it makes you fucking lazy. It makes you lazy, right? Yeah. So this is like, asking someone out is difficult. It's a challenge. It's hard. You're putting yourself out there. You're risking getting your ego hurt, because if you ask someone on a date and they reject you, they're not just rejecting the date, they're rejecting you as a person, right? And that stings. You don't want to go through that. So it's a lot easier if you don't see them face to face and you do it over the screen. And if you want success in dating, laziness is not your ally. Okay. This is not going to work out well for you. So that's bad, but it gets worse. It's actually worse because it's not just online dating. I don't know if you've seen this, but I've seen a lot of videos from women talking about how they don't see men outside anymore. Like single women saying that they'll go to events and there's never any single men there. Men aren't approaching and asking women out on dates. And there's a lot of guys complaining, well, women said they choose the, whining and shit like that. That's why you guys aren't getting laid. You're a bunch of fucking whiners. But what it really is, it's social cohesion has been dropping for a long time. A lot to do with the internet, a lot to do with online dating. But the two biggest culprits I put on there are video games and online porn. Those are the two biggest culprits, I think. Because for guys have like this sense of quest and adventure. We love Zelda and shit. We all want to go out and conquer something. And video games can fill in that gap for you, that you're not actually going to go out and slay any dragons. You're not going to fight a medium-sized dog. And so you can, fulfill that desire in a small way with a video game that gives you several worlds to explore. It makes you a hero. You can feel good about that. And then, like, you want a romantic partner or sexual gratification. And like we said, it's difficult to put yourself out there and get dressed and get off the couch and go out and talk to people and get shot down. Or you can scroll through hundreds of videos full of naked women and pick the exact one that fits your mood at that moment. And, sure, it's not as great as actually having sex, but it's good enough. And then you can do it again a couple hours later if you want. And a lot of guys just do that the entire weekend, months and months, years on end. And yeah, that's a big problem too, which is a lot harder to solve than just the economic suppression that people face because of a capitalistic society.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too far down this road, but online pornography, man, like that has destroyed so many men's chances because it creates these unrealistic expectations. Like you're not gonna just like knock on some woman's door to fix her plumbing and just immediately be brought in, and then she's just gonna be like, "Oh, my husband's not here." Like that's not gonna happen in 99.9% of scenarios that you find yourself in, especially if you're the type of guy who is having to watch that kind of stuff every day. Like there's a reason why that's happening in the first place. And so yeah, it really has disrupted I think it's disrupted expectations for relationships. I think both for men and women, and specifically for young people too. Like a lot of young people discover because of the internet. Back in my day, there were these magazines and stuff, and you couldn't buy them at a certain age, right? So you had to just have like a pervy uncle who had them stuffed in a closet somewhere, and maybe you stumbled upon them. But maybe if you figured out the codes to your pay-per-view, network, you can like download a movie or something like that. But now it's like on your phone, boom, instant. And so a lot of younger people who don't, have parental controls, they're discovering this stuff, and now they're learning these these unrealistic expectations at very young ages, and it's just corruption from the time they get older. Like they don't know how to even approach a woman or how to even start these conversations. But I'm curious what you think about, because you said that's like a hard problem to solve. But there are like a bunch of states that are like trying to solve it. They're making it like where you have to input like your age and like your like information in these sites, and so many of these sites are like so against that they've just stopped operating in certain states. Florida, Texas, a lot of these states, they've just stopped operating. Now, obviously, if you're smart enough to use a VPN, then this doesn't really even apply. But for people who may not understand that, it's like, do you think that those efforts are going to in any way put a dent in this issue?
I don't know if it's going to put much of a dent in there. Because Indiana's a state. We just passed a law like that last year, I think. I think I went through the state last year. I know several states have done it, but I mean, it's kind of like what you said before, where anyone south of 25 doesn't understand what it was like back in the day. That still images, folks. We were looking at still images on paper. Oh, that's how desperate things were back in those days. But you know what? It built character, okay? You had to work to find pornography back then. You had to put in some effort. So, like, even now, like with those laws and stuff, I mean, it applies to like the big websites, but there's smaller ones where you can find pornography. I mean, it's like, it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna put a dent into it unless you really go after this stuff. And I do think that guys should be putting work into it, because that does at least, I don't know, if it's too easy, you don't respect it, you're just scrolling through and everything, and that's why they don't take it seriously. But yeah, I don't know. And even if they do, they can find somewhere. I don't know. You're right. This is a long story here, but do you think like that's a good effort? Because now you start getting into like weird free speech arguments, and I can see that collapsing somehow. Like, I don't know,
Yeah, censorship arguments and things like that. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of that going on right now, as far as like, hey, is this? I mean, we talk so much about freedom and all this kind of stuff. Like you're taking away people's freedoms. But I think it's interesting, because when you look at Project 2025, which I'm sure we're about to get into some of this stuff here. One of the main like concerns they had was they wanted to like nationally outlaw pornography. And I don't think that would work for a number of reasons. A lot of Supreme Court precedents that pretty much say, hey, this is free. This is a free speech issue. We have First Amendment. We can safeguard it from children. We can make it hard to access, but we can't just outright ban it. But I remember seeing that as one of the stated goals of Project 2025, mainly because I think that even they realize that this is adversely affecting young males and their ability to actually, get with women in real life, and that could down the line create population issues, which I know is there's a lot of propaganda with that, but there is some truth to the fact that birth rates are declining and marriage rates are declining, and as you stated in this entire argument, people are just not dating and not in relationships as much as they were even just 5 years ago compared to probably 20, 30 years ago. It's like night and day. And so I think a lot of that is just efforts at trying to do like whatever they can to try to fix these issues. I don't think that pornography is like the absolute main thing that's causing all this. I think it's one of many factors.
Yes. Yeah.
You mentioned a lot earlier about the lack of community and not being able to do that work and have that discipline to go out there and find someone. So it's a lot of things. I think that's just like one thing. And I think it may end up being the scapegoat, right? The thing that they blame this all on, when really there's a lot of other reasons. Like, guys, there's a lot of reasons why the woman doesn't want to date you. It's not just because of your porn addiction and your video game addiction. Like, even though that's a part of it, like your personality and that's a big part of the equation as well. And that's not going to be easily fixable by like legislation or anything like that.
No, I don't think it will. Like even if, first off, you mentioned like the banning of porn has some opposition and everything, free speech and everything. True, but people, if you thought prohibition was bad, okay, like with alcohol, and like if porn became like actually federally illegal in all 50 states, good luck governing this society. Like it's not. I forgot what I was going to say with you mentioned with the laws the states bring in banning pornography. I always said, because this has always been happening ever since the internet became a thing. You've always had legislations like, okay, we need to protect kids and keep them away from pornography and stuff. And while noble, I do understand it. I was an 11-year-old boy once too. I found porn in 1992. Okay. And so if I could find it in 92, like with no internet, trust me, they're finding it today. And so there's only so much you can do to, stymie the assault of millions of boys looking for porn. They're going to find it. All right. And so that's one thing of that. But with, you talk about the fears they have of population decline and all that. That's happening. Yeah, it is. Like it is. And what's really sick and fucking twisted about it is they use this as like Nazi propaganda and everything, which is kind of gross. Because I hate that part, because when you bring it up, it makes you sound like you're on track with these guys who are like, we need more white babies and no immigration. So no, that is not how to fix this problem, whatever. But like you said, there's going to be several steps to get there. And I don't think we have the national will or the courage to address the litany of issues that causes this. So, yeah, nice little aside there. That kind of brought up. And I'm about to go on another one real quick. But I don't know. I don't watch sports anymore because ever since I got rid of cable years ago, I stopped caring. It was a weird thing because I love sports. I watch basketball, football, baseball, I watch it all the time. Now I never watch it. But I did see... You know who Mac McClung is? He is a G League player for the NBA, and like the NBA's minor league, and he's won the last 3 slam dunk competitions. And I wanted to play this clip of Mac McClung. Was it last night? I think
it was last night.
Yeah, the slam dunk competition, and the dunk is really great. I gotta give it up for this guy. Let me see if you guys haven't seen it. He jumps over a car. Now, a lot of players have done this jumping over a car thing. Like Blake Griffin did it years ago, and Blake Griffin was a super high flyer. He only jumped over the hood. But Mac McClung, this guy, let's see this one right here.
Oh my gosh. Allow me to reintroduce my
there. Can't get enough of it. And Mac McClung is fantastic. I love watching him and everything. I do have to say, though, Mac McClung winning 3 slam dunk competitions in a row, doing this every February, like during Black History Month, it's bordering on disrespect now. How long are we going to let this go on, guys? I mean, but white people already have everything else. So basketball is one of the few things that we have, right? And we're going to let Mac McClung, who's like, 6'1", 6'2", come and steal shit? Look, mad respect for the guy. Wish him all the best, but can't say it doesn't irk me just a little bit. Just want to say that out of the way.
The white renaissance in the NBA is a very interesting thing to see because for the last couple of years, him, Austin Reeves, Luka Doncic. I mean, there has been this Nikola Jokic. There's been this resurgence. Now, some of them are European, like actually from like Eastern Europe, but that's still white. And so there's been this like resurgence of white people in the NBA. And I think it's great because I do think that, well, I think it's a 50-50 on it. Because on the one hand, I think it's great because we need more people watching this stuff. I mean, you just said that when you cut cable, you don't watch it anymore. I went, actually, it was like maybe like 5 or 10 years ago, I went through a period where I stopped watching sports for a long time. And it was actually because I had moved to San Francisco, didn't have cable, didn't have TV when I was there. So I just stopped watching sports for a very long time. And I honestly just started back watching them maybe a few years ago. And just started back watching the NBA, like outside of like, I would watch like during maybe playoffs, but outside of playoffs, I just started back watching like regular season games. And I've noticed this. One of the things I noticed, I'm like, wow, there's a lot more white guys in this game than there were like 5-10 years ago, especially like 20 years ago, back in like in the 2000s, there were hardly any, like Dirk. Yeah, like, you know, like Steve Nash. Like 2 or 3. Yeah, that was it. And now there's like a fair amount. And I think that's good to get more eyes on it, to get more people all around the world watching it. That's good. But I also think that, and this is like the Caitlin Clark effect that we've seen with the WNBA. I mean, a lot of these people, they're respectful of the game, they're respectful of the culture, they're not the problem. But Caitlin Clark is a good example of, they have so many weird ass fans who are only fans of them because they're white and playing basketball. And it's like there's like this argument of like, see, we really can still dominate this sport, right? They can't have this sport, you know what I'm saying? Like, we really are still good at this, right? And it's kind of like, they're individuals, man. Like, they've individually got these skills. And yeah, I've noticed it because when I used to see like when the WNBA season was still going, Caitlin Clark had these fan pages, and the fan pages were just littered with guys who, hey, you know, never watched women's basketball a day in their life before this, right? Never cared about women's sports in general a day in their life before this. And B, there was all this weird political and ideological connotations to everything they were saying. They were like, finally, someone who's not from the hood. And I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, I mean, and what's so sad about it is like even Caitlin Clark herself, like none of these players are contributing to this really. Like they're just playing the game. And so many of their fans who don't really respect the sport are only, you know, watching and only, you know, boosting them for these weird cultural and ideological purposes. And that's the unfortunate downfall of it, because honestly, they're making the game better by making it more diverse and you know, spreading it to a wider audience. But you got these weirdos who want to take it in that weird direction. And yeah, it's just something that I've noticed in the last couple of years that's really unfortunate, because it's kind of like people are not watching almost for like the wrong reasons, you know?
Yeah. I comment here, white basketball renaissance, a series of words that I never anticipated hearing strung together. That's funny. Yeah, that's true. I agree on, I think everything that you said right there, because when you mention, the only difference is that, well, I guess you didn't say this, but with the weird fans who will like the Caitlin Clark, I remember seeing stuff like that where it's like, finally someone who plays the game the right way and stuff, you know, folks like that and everything. And I don't think I've seen quite as much of that in the NBA. The WNBA, but for the, I don't know, maybe they do, but maybe it's just more pronounced. Not as much. And so, and also it might be because, like you said, a lot, probably most of the white NBA players seem to be European now, and they, you know, there's always like an othering part too. It's like, I don't know. And so it might be that. And then again, even the Euro players aren't even all white. Like Giannis Antetokounmpo and Wembanyama, they're European, they're black too. So it's like a whole separate thing. But I do agree that I remember back when Tiger Woods and the Williams sisters were like the biggest names in tennis and in golf. And people thought, hey, this is great. You know, the audience is becoming more diverse. And I was like, yeah. And then I remember saying the same thing you just said. And I said, wow, it's kind of a shame there aren't more white NBA players. And people are like, and people get upset. And I was like, wait, no, hold on. You're telling me that more black people are watching golf and tennis now, that there's black people there. You don't believe more white people watch the NBA? Of course they would. Like, why wouldn't they? But then I hadn't anticipated this Caitlin Clark effect. I had not. That was kind of sad to see, because in fact, she's like the number one. I see, and it's also weird too, because you know they don't give a shit about women's basketball. You know they don't watch this at all. They just have this, you know, contrived racial animus between her and the black players. I don't know. So if there were more white players, it could go one of two ways. It could go, okay, this is just the status quo, is how it is now. Or like you said, worst case scenario, all right, we're back on top. Let's go. It's really funny reading old news stories and everything about So if you guys go back in time to the 1800s, like all the championship boxers were white. Black people couldn't even compete most of the time. But then they started integrating and letting black people compete for the title. And you will see article after article saying there is no way a black fighter could ever be heavyweight champion of the world. Black people don't have the skill to possibly win a fight like this or something. And then when it happened, it just shattered them. It's like Jack Johnson like destroyed people's brains when that happened. So it is weird seeing stuff like that in the past. But I don't know. Cory, this is amazing. Like Cory and I feel like we should be related or something. We have so many like thoughts that are just right on the same track, and it is kind of amazing. But all right, I brought him on because I can't remember what I asked when I asked him if he wanted to come on for the interview. And I think I said, you want to come on and talk about stuff that's happening, because it was just every day it seemed like there's another news story. It's hard to pin it down, but the general ones we want to talk about was honestly our new president and our new and Donald Trump. So we're going to talk about all that stuff going on forward, but we want to start with our new president first, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Elon Musk is baffling to me in a lot of ways, because like I always used to say Donald Trump was the most successful con man of all time. And he's still up there. Like he's number 2, maybe 1A to Elon. But I say Elon Musk is actually a better con man because at least Donald Trump has charisma. Like con man, which I assume was a necessity for someone trying to be a con man. Elon Musk has none, like none at all. And he somehow managed to con his way up to the most powerful person on earth. And we have a real life supervillain, and he's fucking lame. I hate seeing it. So what are your thoughts on just Elon Musk in general from, I guess from like when you first heard about him until now? Because like my views have definitely changed from when I first heard about this person.
I mean, when I first heard about Elon Musk, I mean, I'm a tech guy, so I've known about Elon Musk for many, many years, probably well over a decade ago. I remember, when SpaceX started, being able to send our astronauts back into orbit, which is something that we couldn't do here in America. And when we shut down the space shuttle program, I think back in like 2011, and for many years we had to go through Russia just to get our astronauts to the International Space Station and things like that. And then SpaceX started providing a way for us to get back up there. So for many years, I didn't really have strong opinions about him. I thought, hey, that's really cool that he's doing these things with SpaceX, Teslas. I thought Tesla was a pretty cool car. I mean, electric cars. I mean, that's cool. They looked cool. I thought about getting one a long time ago. Would never do that now, but thought about getting one a long time ago. I didn't have enough money back then, but I just kind of didn't have any strong opinions. I just thought, hey, this is kind of cool. And I think it was like in 2021, I started seeing some weird stuff. You started seeing him say some weird stuff about like paying taxes and things like that. And it's just like, okay, that's weird, but hey, he's a billionaire. They're all going to try to get out of paying their taxes and things like that. So it's like, okay, whatever. We disagree on that, but okay. And then I was working in journalism. I was living in New York. I was working for a startup media company up there. This is like 2022. And that's when Elon Musk really just fell off the heel. Like that's when he really just started like posting all these like, eugenics stuff on Twitter. And even before he took Twitter over, his Twitter page was already becoming kind of a dumpster fire for like a year or so before that. And I remember the whole fiasco of him, trying to getting on the board of Twitter, then trying to do like basically a hostile takeover, then trying to back out of buying it, then being forced to buy it, then actually buying it, and then turning it into the sort of the dumpster fire that it has become today. And honestly, there's this author that I follow on TikTok, Jason Pargin. I did an interview with him a couple months ago, and he had one of the best sort of descriptions of what happened to Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk is an example that no matter how much money you have, no matter how smart you may be about like technical things, that anyone can get radicalized online if they spend too much time in certain circles. And I think what happened with Elon Musk, I think it's the same thing that happened to Kanye West. I think it's honestly the same thing that happened to Donald Trump, although in a much different way. I think these guys spent too much time online in certain propaganda circles, seeing all of this, anti-Black propaganda, LGBT propaganda, anti-immigrant propaganda, all these things that was really stoking these inner fears that they had about immigrants, about people of different backgrounds. And I think at a certain point, it just started to infect their brain. And we think that can only happen to someone who's like sitting in their mom's basement and they're broke. They don't have anything else going for them. They're single, whatever, they're poor. And they're the ones getting radicalized. But I think Elon Musk and Kanye West and all these guys are examples of people who can get radicalized, even though they're some of the richest people on earth. And if you spend too much time intaking that misinformation, intaking that propaganda, and it already, because that propaganda is aimed at certain people, not based off of their class or their money, but based off of these fears that they already have about the world. And if you can target those fears, you can weaponize that against anyone, regardless of how much money and power that person has. And so I think that's what happened with Elon Musk. I think he got radicalized by a lot of, this weird alpha male content online, this weird, and I think, and it's weird because you see the same thing happening with Mark Zuckerberg now. Like, he is also turning into this alpha bro. And it's like, bro, you were like the nerd of all nerds for years, man. Everybody hated you on Facebook because of how you at least tried to safeguard this platform. I mean, he never did a good job at that, but at least he tried to have fact checkers and stuff like that. And he just decided, you know what? I'm just going to give up. And I think Mark Zuckerberg is just going down that Joe Rogan, Elon Musk path of, maybe if I cater to this alpha bro base, that will get me the same type of power and influence that those guys have now gotten over society as a result of catering to it. So I think it's an example of weaponization of one's fears and biases against them and turning them into radicals. I think that's exactly what happened to Elon Musk.
Well, all right. I remember hearing about Elon Musk years ago. I think the first time I ever heard of him was when they were talking about cars being operated without drivers, and how driverless technology was going to be the wave of the future, and what that meant for the economy. And because I remember reading this and everything and looking, because this guy Elon Musk, this tech genius, is out there trying to make these driverless cars. What is that going to mean and everything? I don't know what year that was. I feel like it was like 8 years ago, something like that, when I first heard of it. But then after that, I kept hearing these legends of this guy named Elon Musk. Yeah, I never saw him. Yeah, he didn't make public appearances or anything like that. I'm sure there's pictures out there, but I know what he looked like. And I would always hear people quoting him and talking about his, rocket program that he wanted and everything. And the first time I rolled my eyes at something Elon Musk said, and it wasn't really his fault, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I saw a news article and it was everywhere. I felt like I saw people covering it on TV. I saw a bunch of headlines for it online. And it said, Elon Musk says there's a 50% chance we're living in a simulation, that the universe is a simulation. And I saw this article all the time. And all I remember thinking is like, who the fuck cares? Elon Musk, whoever he is, has no idea more than I do if we live in a simulation, right? He doesn't. Like, who gives a fuck? And I was like, that wasn't his fault that it caught fire, but it was everywhere. But then I kept seeing more and more of him. And then a few years ago, I don't know, like 4 maybe years ago, he started speaking out in public. And I'll go on record, like the worst decision he could have ever made. I mean, just, although hard to argue now, considering the situation now, but he did. I think that Elon Musk did more to damage the credibility of billionaires as super geniuses than anyone I've ever seen, just seeing him on stage. And I always mention this, that look, just because you're a poor speaker, that does not mean that you're, not intelligent or anything like that. However, if I had a reputation of being like Iron Man or something, and this incredible quick thinker and everything, and I couldn't string 2 sentences together, I would never open my mouth. You would never see me on stage just stumbling over simple sentences and everything and saying absurd shit. I don't know how he thought that was a good idea or how it worked. Once again, don't know how it works. Zuckerberg, though, I think Elon Musk is actually a racist and always has been. I mean, come on. Like, look at his past and everything, and like his. I don't think his affinity toward the plight of the white South Africans is new. I think that he's always kind of had this, and it kind of makes sense as it bleeds over into other Nazi adjacent talking points that he's always making. Zuckerberg, I don't believe this is genuine for a goddamn second. I don't believe that at all. I think Zuckerberg knows who breads his butter now. And so he's like, well, Trump. I saw clips from that Joe Rogan interview. Embarrassing, man. Mark Zuckerberg wearing a t-shirt 3 sizes too big. He's been doing the MMA thing, I think that's genuine. He seems actually like that. He's got the chain. He's got like the curls and everything. And he's like, yeah, if you're asking me, I think that tech culture is too feminine, man. Okay, Mark Zuckerberg, yeah, I know what you're doing here, man. I know what's happening. We're moving our base of operations from California for tech to Texas. Nothing explaining anything about that. I don't buy Zuckerberg's as being genuine, but to me, it just shows that he's willing to sacrifice whatever values he has to be on the side of the people with the power.
Well, yes, and to be clear, I agree with your statement about Elon Musk always being racist. I mean, he was raised in apartheid South Africa. I don't think he was ever not at least somewhat racist, right? I totally agree with that. I just think that there was a time period where that wasn't as big of an, like, he didn't care to be public about it. Like, he didn't care to make it an issue. Like, he wasn't trying to invade and infiltrate governments in order to push racist policies like he is now, right? He was focusing on, these other tech related goals. And, I guess it's one of those things as to, like, did the radicalization of online force him to go down that road? Or was that always his plan? Was he always planning to be this super Bond villain one day? And he just needed enough money and enough power and just decided, okay, I'm going to do it right now. Who knows? Because again, he was not this vocal about these types of social issues and things like that, even 5-6 years ago. And now all of a sudden it's become the main thing he's known for. I mean, I think people now, this was so weird to me about Elon Musk's fan base. Like, the people who really like Elon Musk, like now, like him for, his political alignments with Trump, the things he's trying to do to our government, which we'll talk about here in a second. But it's like the two main sources of income this man has is space travel and electric cars. And I find that the vast majority of the conservative people who love Elon Musk, one, would never buy an electric car, right? Because they think that it's going against, diesel and gas. And it's like they have all these weird, political philosophies about that. But two, a lot of them don't even think space is real. Like, if you go online, you will see these flat earthers, these people who don't think that the sky is some type of weird computer generated thing and that it's not real. And like, they think of like these biblical stories, Tower of Babel, they would never allow us to go to space. So no one's actually been to the moon. No one's actually been in space. It's all fake. It's like, you do realize Elon Musk's whole thing is space, like going to Mars. Like, that's his whole thing. So like, how do they in their mind do the mental gymnastics to say, this guy speaks for me, yet he's doing something that I don't even believe in, like, as far as his actual career? Like, it's one of those weird things where I tell people, like, nobody really cares about what people, it's just like Trump, Trump's background is in like real estate, but it's also in like media, entertainment. Like, this guy was a big time media. He was like, people say, oh, Hollyweird. He was in Hollyweird. Like, That was his thing for years. It's like, you guys are completely ignoring what these guys do for a living as long as they say things that cater to your bigotry. And that's insane to me. Like, you can't actually read the tree from the forest and see who these people are. All they got to do is tell you what you want to hear, and you'll get on your knees for them. And that's absurd to me. Like, I don't understand that. I mean, I do, but it's just ridiculous.
That is the entire last segment here. So I won't put a pin in this because I have a lot to say about this, brother. That is just like, it is baffling. But I will tack on to something that I didn't have written down here. The rise of pseudoscience, man. It is it is depressing as hell. I was at a barbershop about a year and a half ago. Like, my barber was out of town and I had to go to a new one. And I was talking to these folks. Two barbers in the same room were flat earthers. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I was just going over how we know the earth is round, why we know the earth is round, like the equations for gravity that, we use to figure out, like, where everyone is pulled toward the center of the earth at roughly 9.8 meters per second squared. Talking about how, well, Eratosthenes, there's an experiment you could do today, like measuring shadows on like light poles at noon in different cities and seeing that the angles are different, which is impossible. I mean, I went through all of this shit. And at the end, they're like, yeah, man, I don't know. And I asked like the obvious question, okay, assuming you're right and the earth is, I was like, assuming that the earth is actually round or the earth is flat, why are people lying that the earth is round? Like, assuming you're right and it's flat, why you're telling me every military, every like a cruise liner, every space agency, every merchant marines, every cartographer, every air and missile defense operator, that was me. Like, I'm lying about like the shape of the earth and everything. What's in it for them? Why? What could they possibly have to gain for doing this for hundreds of years? And the guy said, well, who knows why? I said, no, that's not enough. Like, people aren't going to put in that much work to get nothing out of it. And then he said, well, I'm not even sure if these folks are human, And I said, okay, are you saying this literally or metaphorically that they're not humans? He goes, yeah, I mean, they could be, like a demonic stuff. So, okay, we're done here. We're done. Like, you're just right. There's just nowhere to go here. And it's sad because they always like, you're talking about like, there are a lot of biblical literalists or whatever, like the sky is an actual dome, an object and stuff. if you want the wisdom of the ancients knew the earth was round. Like we've known this for thousands of years. And it's just sad to see all this fucking work human beings have put into understanding reality and describing things as accurately as possible, to see it tossed away for nothing, just because you didn't pay attention in 8th grade science class. And now someone does a slick video and you believe that there's a hole in the North Pole that leads you to the center of the earth where there's a fake sun down there. That's just sad to see. I hate seeing that going around, but I don't know. With Elon Musk and everything, they trust him because he's a rich guy, right? Isn't that what it comes down to? That if you're rich, you must have you must have done something right, and you must be intelligent. So even if I always use Elon Musk with aliens, because they think aliens are here and the government's hiding them. Look, if they're here, Elon Musk would tell us, right? You're telling me Elon Musk would drop the opportunity to go down in history as the man who introduced extraterrestrial life to make? No chance he would pass that up. But what I was going to ask about Elon Musk is, I was trying to think of a historical parallel to Elon Musk, and I can't do it. I was trying my best, because I can think of a lot of rich people who were involved in government, Carnegie, Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Vanderbilt, stuff. And they, of course, used their influence and their wealth to shape their industries in the way they want, and the culture. So like Henry Ford did a lot with culture and everything. I can't think of anyone who's done it to the extent that Elon Musk has, where like half of the country didn't worship Henry Ford, right? Even though all the power he had. Can you think of anyone who's come close to this?
I can't. I think Henry Ford is an interesting analogy, just because he was also super, super racist and had all these weird, anti-Semitic theories. And I think even Hitler mentioned Henry Ford by name in one of his books or whatever. So I do think that Henry Ford's a similar figure, but like you said, nowhere near that kind of power and leverage over the government, and nowhere near that kind of, fame and admiration among the people. And right, you're right. I'm going through, even when I go through like stuff outside of America, like just Rome and Greece and everything, I really can't think of at least a well-known similarity to a figure who's very similar to Elon Musk. But I do want to say this. You said that people like respect Elon Musk, or like the people who love him because he's rich. It's also because he's rich and he says things that they agree with. Because if you're rich and you say things that they don't agree with, well, then you're a part of the cabal. You're a part of the Hollywood this or that. You're a part of the deep state or whatever. But if you're rich and you're working those exact same industries, but you say conservative things, well, then it's like, oh, well, this person should be the leader of the free world. This person should have all the power and control, and we're not going to question anything they're doing. And what's so weird about Elon Musk is that, a lot of the things that his organization is Doge, whatever it is. I mean, the fact that it's even called Doge, it's like that within itself is just like a clear-cut example that it's a farce. That none of this is legitimate. This is a name that's been associated with his brand for years. So this is just Trump's way of rewarding Musk for, giving Trump a few extra votes that he would have needed to win the election. And the things that he's targeting, like all the things that he's targeting, are either scientific institutions, things like NOAA, things like NASA, things like the FAA, or he's targeting things for, these weird political ideological reasons, like the US aid, where, the humanitarian aid that we're giving to other countries, targeting FEMA, which is like, considering how bad climate change is about to get, I don't think that's the thing you need to be targeting right now. Targeting the DEI initiatives, and then of course the Department of Education, which again would just be disastrous for most Americans, including the vast majority of the red state Americans who supported Trump in the first place. So what's so crazy to me is that he's not even targeting like the actual areas of waste in our government. Like if he wanted to target the actual areas of waste in our government, it starts and ends with the Pentagon. Like audit the Pentagon, target that, and you could easily find about $1 trillion missing dollars right there, or close to it, right? That's not even on the radar. Like he's only targeting things based off of these ideological concerns. And what's also weird about it is just like all these people, USAID aside, like that may be the one thing that's like international aid that he's targeting, but everything else he's targeting deals with like things that we as Americans use on a domestic level. And so these are the same people who say things like, we give too much of our money away to Ukraine. We give too much of our money away to Israel. that money should be here in America. It's like, okay, he's targeting the institutions that's using that money for Americans. Department of Education, Medicaid, Medicare, food assistance. These are things that we use as Americans, and these are the things you're cheering for him to defund or cut funding for. And it's like, what are we even talking about here? Like, I don't understand. The cognitive dissonance is just so strong. I don't understand why people don't see how this is going to adversely affect them far more than not. I don't get it.
It is odd. That's I wanted to talk about the Henry Ford thing you mentioned before I get in on this. So people, what Cory was saying there about how Henry Ford was racist. Now, I wouldn't fault people for not knowing that. It's not like you're taught that in school. In school, you're taught that Henry Ford created the car or whatever. He didn't, but that's kind of what people think, and that he was the first one to make use of the assembly line that we know and love today to make work more efficient. And he paid people a lot of money, and so they could buy his equipment, which is really funny. You start looking at there before they don't teach you shit like, I didn't do this in school. I went to a private school, but I guess in a lot of public schools they taught square dancing back in the day. Like, I talked to people. Yeah, a lot of people I talked to. Yeah, I didn't, because I just read an article on this and I brought it up. And some people on the podcast like, oh yeah, they taught us square dancing in school. I didn't know public schools taught square dancing, but that can be traced back to Henry Ford, because Henry Ford did not like the influence of jazz. And he said that, jazz is poisoning the mind of kids. We need to teach them good old American square dancing. And apparently a lot of schools did it, at least until the 90s. Maybe they still do. But when people I knew were kids, that they were doing it. But Henry Ford also wrote this book called The International Jew, The World's Foremost Problem. So that is just the title. All right. It doesn't get any better from there. OK, so if you're wondering what Cory meant about Henry Ford being a little racist, yeah, he was. And so, yeah, like absolute bigots having a lot of influence in the White House and in culture. Nothing new, but nothing to the extent of Elon Musk. Unless you count the founding fathers. Like, that is honestly, I thought about it. I was like, the only parallels I can think would be like Thomas Jefferson or George Washington, where you had people with immense wealth, more than anyone else in the area, who were also vital in shaping the course of American society. But Jesus Christ, at least with Thomas Jefferson, you can point to some really good things, like writing the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom, which was like the foundation of our First Amendment. Great. Show me something Elon Musk has done that matches anything like that. Doge, man, this is like, I'm so glad you brought that up, because all I can think is I see what's on the news and I see stuff happening. And I swear to God, like a dozen times this last month, I remember thinking, okay, is this real? Am I dreaming? Am I in a coma and someone's trying to wake me up? Like Doge, a lot of people may not even remember what Doge was. It's just this meme of this Japanese dog. And it was a cute meme, But Elon Musk's like, no, actually, I'm going to take this, because Elon Musk's mind is stuck 15 years ago. Everything he does, he's obsessed with shit from, the past, like iRobot. All of his stuff looks like iRobot and everything like that. So it's just so fucking lame. And then you'll see Donald Trump. I saw like an official White House release, like with the presidential seal on it and the White House in the background. And it said, President Trump puts a stop to the DEI madness of the government. So what is that? I saw the U.S. Army retweet libs of TikTok today. The U.S. Army official Twitter page retweeted libs of TikTok. It's like, we're living in an alternate, like bizarre reality. And I love that you mentioned the fact that the elites, conservatives always talk about the elites and how the elites are bad. And what I need you guys to understand is that when conservatives mention the elites, they're not talking about elites the way we talk about them. Because when we talk about elites, almost always we're talking about financial elites, economic elites, people who hold absolute power. That's not what conservatives mean. Conservatives mean cultural elites, so however they phrase that. So Elon Musk, richest man on earth, not an elite. He's not. Your librarian, she's an elitist. Like, she is like actually the one at the levers of power here, because she's letting men in dresses sit and read books at that library. So that's what they don't have that set up. The red state situation. fuck it. We're going to go right into it. We won't wait till the end of the show because this is like we're talking about how the dissonance between what people want and what they're getting and how they're happy about it. I saw a video by creator Superman Todd the other day, and he was talking about how with conservatives and with Trump voters and everything, they don't need to win anything, or like life doesn't need to get better for them to be happy. They just need to see the people that they don't like suffer. That's what they really want. That counts as a win to them. So sure, Trump campaigned on no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, shit like that. Nothing in the budget proposal for that. Nothing. But he did ban trans athletes from the NCAA, and they will be partying and celebrating that for months on end. They never gave a shit about grocery prices. They didn't care about any of that. They talk about, like you mentioned, foreign aid, which is like 1% of our budget, and how we should be using that here and vote against every measure to use that here. It's horrible to see. Oh shit, I forgot the comments here. So Treestop says, in my experience, people's casual belief in eugenics is a gateway to other pseudoscience. I can't tell you how many times I hear poor people shouldn't have kids. That's definitely eugenics. We had a eugenics conversation. Oh my God, Cory, we had a eugenics conversation about idiocracy. Yes. And I think about that because how many times have you heard we're living in idiocracy? It's like, oh yeah, but people do have a lot of casual eugenics and stuff. They do say this thing about poor people not having kids. And there's two ways to approach this. It's like, all right, if you can't afford to have kids, it's probably a good idea, not to like hold back on it and everything. Or you can look at the overall thing that we should craft a society where poor people can have kids, or no one's poor, and that you can have kids if you want this to continue. But yeah, I don't know what to say about Elon Musk. Actually reminds me, since we're on this topic here, Elon Musk, he was sold to us as someone who was cool, like someone who was the new Tony Stark, and that's how his insane plan with the Mars thing. You mentioned that how he's he's named after a character of some book where a guy goes to Mars, and so okay, I didn't know that, and is that something everybody knew but me? Okay. I hate when that happens, but he's obsessed. Like he's always saying that if we want to save humanity, we must have colonies on other planets. We must go to Mars. And folks, if you learn one thing from this conversation today, that is a scam. Like his whole entire thing about building rockets, and privatizing our space program, and getting people to Mars. He had a prediction that I think he said we would be on Mars by 2025. I think like 10 years ago, he said that he haven't gotten these rockets off the planet without exploding or anything. It's just a scam to get money from the government. He's going to keep doing it until people realize that they're not going anywhere. So Elon Musk, he's someone, if you told me about him and I never saw him or saw his Twitter feed and everything, that he'd be cool. Trump is kind of the same way. Trump is like, I don't know how many times, I'm sure you heard the jokes. It's like, oh, we finally have a president who started a space force, who's like probably an atheist, and he bangs porn stars, and he's the worst president I've ever seen. But what do you think about Trump and all this? Because Trump has been a fascinating figure. I mean, he's going to go down in history as one of the most studied Americans ever, which upsets me. But how could you not? That Trump is going to die a winner, which bugs me. He is he's going to when the lights go out for him. He was a 2-time presidential election winner. He's going to have the undying love of tens of millions of Americans. It's not going away. And he's delivering for his people. He gets out there and he's passing all of this awful shit to thunderous applause. What is your opinion on Trump in the history of U.S. presidency? Which is a broad question, but how would you describe him?
Well, first of all, I don't necessarily think that it's a 100% guarantee that Trump's going to go down as a winner because, one, I mean, we could take a look at a couple of parallels. I mean, Grover Cleveland was a 2-time non-consecutive president, did not have the best second term. Woodrow Wilson was very similar to Trump with, a lot of the racist policies, was kind of stroking out there in his last term. Not to be offensive, but I mean, he wasn't very, very much there. Second terms in general, just historically speaking, are, even going back to George Washington, second terms are rough and they tend to be not as successful as first terms. A lot of the great U.S. presidents, from Washington to Grant to almost all of the last few 2-term presidents we've had, did not have great second terms. I mean, it's just sort of, they call it the second term curse. There's a lot that goes into that, a lot of reasons why that's the case. But Trump will probably not be immune to that. Now, will he continue to have that undying love with all of these people? Sure, that may be true. It depends on how bad things get, but that may be true because it seems like right now it doesn't really matter how bad things are going to get. They're still going to say, oh, they're going to either say it's not Trump's fault or, oh, it's all Biden's fault, even though he's not even president anymore. Like they'll figure out a way to keep the blame away from Trump. But as far as how the history books regard Trump, that's an interesting question because I think it'll be very similar to how the history books regard Andrew Jackson, because I think that Andrew Jackson is, in my opinion, the type of president that Trump is trying to emulate the most. I don't think he's going to quite get there, but I think that's the type of person he's trying to emulate the most. Because Andrew Jackson pretty much did the same thing Trump did as far as like going into the government with these really strong opinions and these strong ideologies and just taking a freaking wrecking ball to anything in government that went against those ideologies, from the Bank of the United States to any federal institution that he felt wasn't in line with his ideology. It was getting the axe or it was getting some form of the axe. And then, of course, Jackson was responsible for the Trail of Tears, displacing, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of indigenous tribes people from the Southeast United States into the Western territories. And that's essentially what Trump is trying to do with undocumented people and migrants and illegal immigrants. He's trying his hardest to do something very similar to that. You saw the story the other day where he's talking about using Guantanamo Bay to house over 30,000 migrants, which is like Guantanamo Bay at its height only housed like maybe 700 or so enemy combatants. You're trying to put 30,000 migrants there, and why? Is it the whole purpose to like send these people back to their home countries? Why would you send them to Cuba? Like they're not all from Cuba. Most of them aren't from Cuba. What is this? Like that's just like literal Nazi shit. Like you're just trying to create internment camps and possibly even concentration camps. Like there's no other purpose. If your whole purpose is to keep these people out, why are we holding them indefinitely? That doesn't make any sense. So I think he's really trying his hardest to try to imitate like an Andrew Jackson approach, a very hard-nosed, strong-arm, strongman approach to governance that's not really going to work. I mean, it might work, unfortunately, but it probably won't work. As far as how the history books look at him, I think it'll be like Andrew Jackson. I mean, Andrew Jackson is somebody we put on the $20 bill. A lot of people for a long time, in history classes, we were always taught that he was a strong leader. Yep. And then you get older and you do your research and you're like, this guy was fucking awful as a human being. Like one of the absolute worst, if not the worst human being to ever be president. And I think it also deals with different eras because, recently a couple months ago, I went to the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library Museum. I did some videos for them. And it was like, there was a period where Grant was seen as a terrible president. Yeah. But only because of like the Southern lost cause mythology that made him seem like a terrible president because of his actions during Reconstruction. And then when you get into a certain era where you see the need for things like Reconstruction, you see the need for things like civil rights, then you look back at Grant and you're like, well, actually, he actually tried to do a lot of really helpful things. And I think that's what Trump's, I think it depends on the time period. If we're in a time period where conservatism and traditionalism and that kind of mentality is in control, then yeah, those individuals will probably see Trump as a champion. But if we're in a time period where, and I don't know if America will ever have this time period again, but a time period where intellectualism and rational thought is at the forefront of things, then, I mean, Trump will be seen as probably like, a stain on our history, at the very least. So I think it just depends on the time period. It just depends on what America turns into. But I think overall, he will always be a very complicated figure because there will be those who will always love him and there will be those who will always hate him. And there's not going to be a lot of middle ground. There's not going to be a lot of people who are just like, he was all right. Like there's not going to be a lot of people who could have that opinion, that like that middle, like, oh yeah, he was middle of the road presidency. No, it's not going to be. You either love him or hate him, and that's going to be it.
Cory, you say that, but I would. So if you would have said this to me October of last year, I would be inclined to agree with you. But the fact that there were so many people who just didn't vote at all, it's like, Harris, Trump, I don't know. They say that. I think a lot of people do think that. I mean, the election last year was a rare moment where I had to just look myself in the eyes like, whoa, were you wrong on this? You fucked that up bad, man. I mean, as a guy who's almost never wrong, that was a weird situation to be in. And to say that, I always said that, no matter how bad this nation is, like, come on, we're better than this. And it turns out we are not. It turns out we aren't. It turns out that, like Donald Trump you can't even use like the excuse from 2016 where Trump was a new person. Donald Trump has been the most famous person in the Western Hemisphere for 10 years now. And people still said, yep, let's go. So I don't know, at least as it sits, a lot of people don't have a strong. I mean, I would figure they would. Of course, I think I do. Everyone I know does, but that's kind of odd. You said that Trump wants to be like Andrew Jackson. And he has said that. Like, I remember his first term, I think he had a picture of Jackson in the Oval Office. I don't know if he does this term, but he always mentioned that Andrew Jackson was the president that he tried to be like, which makes sense that he would pick Jackson because Jackson was known, like Cory said. I remember being a kid and learning. So Andrew Jackson wanted to expel like the Seminole Indians out of Florida. And the Supreme Court said, actually, no, you can't do that. And Jackson said, well, the court has made its ruling. Now let the court enforce it. Basically like, well, you and what army is going to stop me? And as a kid, I was like, oh, that's so cool that he said that. Then I got older, I was like, oh my God, no, what the fuck? Yeah, that sounds cool and everything. But look what he did after it. Like I was such a dumb kid. I didn't get past the actual statement to look into the atrocities. But what's really strange about Trump, he wants to be like another president too. I don't know if you've seen this. William McKinley. Have you seen this?
I have heard a little bit about this. It's weird. I'll be on like TikTok Live, and people will always ask me, "What's Trump's obsession with McKinley?" And when people first started asking me that, I was like, "I don't know," and I was kind of unaware of it. And then I started looking into it, and I was like, "This is really weird." I think some of it may have to do with the tariffs. You know, McKinley was responsible for a really large tariff increase. His name was lended to a really large tariff increase. It actually happened before he was even president. I believe the McKinley tariff went into place, if I'm not mistaken. Doing Benjamin Harrison or something. I'm not really sure. But I know McKinley was responsible for like a huge tariff. And because Trump is trying to do tariffs, maybe that has a lot to do with it. But McKinley, it's actually very interesting that he's choosing McKinley because McKinley is actually the beginning of the Republican Party really being a party for the wealthy. Like that was the moment where the rich really consolidated around the Republican Party because the Democrats at that time, you know, there was a guy, Williams Jennings Bryan was the nominee for the Democrats in 1896. And Williams Jennings Bryan was, you know, he was into eugenics, he was a little racist, but he was actually, other than that, a very Bernie Sanders. Other than that, he was a very Bernie Sanders type politician. He was very much like the poor people are being screwed, the rich people are screwing us over. We need to do this, we need to do that. You know, it was very, very much against the rich. And the rich saw that and was like, oh shit, we got to stop this. And so they all poured their money into McKinley's campaign. And McKinley was kind of the first president to sort of buy his way into the presidency. His campaign tactics are very similar to tactics that we still use to this day, as far as like, you know, the way they drew him, the way they framed his posters and everything was very much in line with like whoever has the most money is going to basically win. And so it's interesting that he keeps saying McKinley. I don't even think he's like consciously understanding what he's saying. He's basically saying, I want to be the guy for the rich. That's like what he's low key saying. But I think he's looking at McKinley's maybe some of the more traditional things and maybe some of the more economic things that McKinley was responsible for. But really, it's subconsciously sort of just more of a, I want to be the guy who supports the richest, and that's basically going to be my legacy. I mean, that's what I hear when I hear McKinley.
Yeah, I first heard him talk about McKinley on this random video I saw. He was going to like black barbershops. He was making a big push for a long time. I saw him do that. And he was sitting in one. Some guy was asking about the economy. And Donald Trump sits there and he says, well, you know, years ago, we had a president, William McKinley. I was like, whoa, I almost dropped the phone. I was like, Donald Trump knows who William McKinley is? I mean, I was like, he's got my attention now. I can't believe this. And I don't know if he's like someone just mentioned McKinley to him in some conversation, or if he's just for some reason been obsessed with a president that 90% of Americans couldn't name or tell you anything about. That was kind of odd to me. But also with William Jennings Bryan, William Jennings Bryan ran for president like 100 times. He ran for president like he kept going. He just kept running, kept getting his ass kicked and everything. And I remember like really William Jennings Bryan, he was the silver-tongued orator. I remember people saying that all the time. Yeah, I guess the guy could really give a speech. And he always said that, you know, we shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold. You guys would be amazed to find out how much of American politics based on like what our currency should be based on. You know, should it be gold? Should it be silver? Gold and silver, fiat and fiat, because that was the right choice. But anyway, that was interesting you brought that up. And Trump with Guantanamo Bay. The Guantanamo Bay, it's ridiculous. I think like the max capacity for Guantanamo is like 1,500, like absolute max or something. And him saying we're sending 35,000 people there. This is just, I think, honestly, Trump is just prone to absurd hyperbole. That's the only language he knows. Everything is the greatest thing we've ever seen, the worst thing that's ever happened in history. No one's seen anything like this before. Everything is beautiful. He just can't help himself. I thought this when it was January 6th, and he said that I offered 10,000 soldiers at the Capitol to Nancy Pelosi. I was like, where would they go? 10,000 soldiers at the Capitol building? What? They'd be like standing on top of each other. Of course, it's like, yeah, he made it up. It's just some fantastically huge number that he can't help himself with. And what I wrote down, Supreme Court and I wrote that, and Grant. Fuck, I don't know where I'm going with that. But yeah, I think that Trump is going to be remembered as a chaotic figure and everything. And just, I think he's going to be the most studied president of American history. I do, because like Trump, even with like, Grover Cleveland had the non-consecutive terms. I've never seen a political force like Donald Trump. I've never seen it. I mean, like Barack Obama is the only one who comes close, like in my lifetime. But Donald Trump is the most popular conservative Republican I have ever seen. Like no one comes close. Like even as big as Reagan was, we weren't really, I doubt he had Reagan was more like a normal politician than Trump still. And so, trying to compare it historically, I don't know. It's going to be difficult. Oh yeah, when my brother and I went to public school for the first time, they made him do a square dancing class, even though my dad wrote a letter saying that we were not allowed to dance. I also did not know Musk was named after a Martian. Okay, look, someone didn't know about that either. But yeah, the thing with Trump and with Jackson and the comparisons to the future, I really don't know. But Trump now, I talk about what is his obsession? I have to get your opinion on this. What is his obsession with Greenland and Canada and making it the 51st state? What is up with that? Because almost everything else Trump does, I can kind of slot it away. It's like, okay, well, he's doing this to appeal to these folks. He wants these folks. I have no fucking clue what's going on. And my initial thought was maybe like Trump likes to be, grand and historical. He's like, I'm going to go down in history as a president who added a 51st state. I can see that appealing to his ego. But if that's his goal, Puerto Rico's right there. Right there, right? It's like that doesn't make sense. So like, what do you think is up with that? I really don't know.
Well, first of all, real quick, I just do want to comment on the thing about Donald Trump being the most studied president. I think he will be among the most studied presidents, but I think historians will focus even more on how the hell it happened. Like the people and the mindset of America at that time period, why it went down that road. I think obviously that'll be among great debate and great discussion. Somebody's going to be getting paid a lot of money in the future just to study 2015 through 2025. Like what the hell was going on in this country during this time period? Just to find out and figure out what the hell it was.
I agree. And I also I'm not grateful for a lot of things in this time period. I am going to be grateful like 30 years from now because people will be asking. And I know there'll be folks saying, well, voting for him made sense at the time. No, the fuck it didn't. No, it didn't. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be I was there the entire way. So, yeah, I don't know. I can't wait for that. But, yeah, what do you think is up with his weird obsession with Greenland and Canada?
Well, I think you've already hit the head on the nail, or whatever they call it. Like, it's about his hyperbole. It's about his obsession with anything that's bigger than life. And I do think he wants to be seen as an expansionist president. We haven't really seen an expansionist president. I mean, technically, Truman was the last time we saw any additional territory like that be added on to America. Obviously, Hawaii and Alaska became a state after that, but we already owned them and everything. But we haven't seen an outwardly like I want to actually be an expansionist president since Theodore Roosevelt. We haven't seen this in a very, very long time. And I think that he sees it as a source of power. If I have the ability to add to America's territorial gains, if I have an ability to add to our, the actual land we hold, I can flip that and use that as a way to say to conservatives, look at me, I'm giving you more land. I'm literally adding to the area size of America. You name me a Democrat that can do that. Name me a Republican who can do that, right? And then two, it's also just a massive distraction, right? Like that kind of stuff. It's like the Gulf of America stuff. It's like that has no bearing on anything, but it's like these massive distractions give his base these sort of symbolic wins that don't have any effect on their daily lives, don't make anything better for them, and things are going to get worse for them. But if they can just in their mind say, well, you know what, 10 years from now, there'll be some Trump fan be like, you know what, he gave us Greenland. And Biden couldn't do that, and Obama couldn't do that. He's the one who gave us Greenland. It's like, but bro, did you ever care about getting Greenland before Trump said something about it? Like, was that ever a goal of yours? It's like he says it, and now all of a sudden you want it, but it's like you probably couldn't even tell me what Greenland was on a map. Like Greenland isn't even green. Like you couldn't even tell me what it is before Trump started mentioning it. Now the Canada stuff is a lot more unusual and a lot more troubling because the Canada stuff is like, okay, Greenland is one thing. There's natural resources there. Maybe Denmark will sell it. and we do have military bases there already. Canada, on the other hand, that's like some Russia Putin shit. Like that's like you're basically saying you want to disrupt the sovereignty of a nation just because it borders you, and maybe you don't politically agree with some of the things that it's doing. And so that to me is much more troubling. I think it's mostly just shit talk. I think it's just him just saying some shit to try to like piss off the Canadians, piss off Trudeau, who won't be there much longer anyway in power. I think it's just some shit that just kind of pissed him off, and it's just like him just engaging in what I guess he would refer to as locker room talk, as what he, because he was talking about sexual assaulting women, he called it locker room talk. So I think this is just like presidential locker room talk. But I think if he actually starts like legitimately pursuing something like that, that would be very troubling, because that's when you know, okay, I know we call him a Nazi, I know we call Elon Musk Nazis and shit like that, and they do seem to have an affinity for that ideology. But when you start actually trying to invade sovereign nations to get more land, like that's actual Hitler Nazi shit. Like it's no longer like a hyperbolistic, I don't think that's a word, but it's no longer an analogy. Like you actually are trying to repeat the actual steps they took to try to create the Third Reich. Like you're actually doing it in real time, and that's something very troubling that people really shouldn't take lightly.
Do you think it's a distraction? Because I'm not convinced it is, and the reason I'm not is because ostensibly the distraction is there to give people some bread and circus, like, oh, look at this is interesting, isn't this cool? And in the meantime you do something awful, but they brag about the awful things even more than the ridiculous things, because and they seem to love it. They love it. They're like, oh yeah, Elon Musk has access to everyone's social security number. Great. They love it. They're the people he has rifling through $6 trillion of government funds. The oldest one is 24. Oh, great. This is fantastic. It's like, I don't know. Cause like, if it's I think he does it because for the memes, like Trump and Elon, that's actually, look, this is something that we have got to come to terms with sooner rather than later. The way we thought the world worked and politics works, it's dead. It's gone. This idea that we gotta have gravitas, and that we have like these rules. The whole, like the tweet with the dog can't play basketball, but the dog's dunking on you. That's what we're doing right now. And it's like you've got to be marketable. You've got to be viral. You've got to be interesting. That's how you win. I mean, and I wish people cared about policy, and I still do. I think that you could do that. You can do both. You can be interesting and charismatic and catch people's attention and catch their eyes and say stuff that fires them up. You need to do that. But Trump is doing it better than everybody. Like he is. Like he's shown that, hey, this way you guys have done politics for 40 years. I step on stage and crush you immediately because I understand what it takes to catch people's attention. And I guess the old statement is true that, there's no, no publicity is bad publicity. It's like, if you have it, you have it.
But what's so interesting about that? I think people are kind of like shocked. And I mean, people who think logically and rationally about these things are kind of maybe very sad and almost just shocked to think that meme culture, and social media gifs and things like this have completely taken over our political system. And there was a period where I too kind of looked at that and was like, you got to be kidding me. This is like absolutely ridiculous. But then I started really thinking about it. And if you really think about it, like forms of popular media always sort of get intersected with politics.
Yes,
I mean,
true.
Back in the 40s, presidents liked to be seen with celebrities, Hollywood stars. I mean, all the Hollywood people joined the military during World War II to boost morale and things like that. In the 60s, JFK was always on television and making use of that medium. Reagan had Michael Jackson at the White House talking about the PYTs and stuff. Like, I'm sure people at that time, like older people, was like, "This is absurd. Why has he got some pop star, a black pop star at the White House talking about PYTs? Like, this is absurd." And I think Bill Clinton and the internet. I think we think it's absurd at the time. But I think it's just that natural progression of utilizing the thing that people are paying attention to the most to try to boost your own profile. And I think that at this point in time, internet culture, meme culture, Reddit, Twitter, this is the kind of stuff that controls the majority of how people, especially people under 50, think these days. And so that's kind of where they're going to. So I think it seems really absurd, but I think it's just the natural order of things. And I also think that Democrats and liberals have got to fucking get it together. Like they have to be able to do that shit. Like they are so terrible on social media. Like even in the face of all these things that Elon Musk and Trump is doing, you'll see like Cory Booker being like, "We're so mad. We're upset. We're not going to take this." And it's like, bro, they just made a meme about you just now. Like Libs of TikTok just made a fucking meme about you on Twitter that's going viral more so than anything you just said. Like you've got to figure out more clever ways, and you've got to honestly play this game that they're playing and get better at it, or else you're not going to win any elections.
Nope.
Like not competitive ones, not national ones. It's just not going to happen. So they've got to get better at it. But it's just pathetic how bad they are at it.
Yeah, the people at the helm right now are not up to the task. And I don't know if you saw this clip with Chuck Schumer leading a rally against Elon Musk, and I'll share it with you guys right here. This is our fearless leader in the Senate.
I'm going to stand with you in this fight, and we will win. 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 We won't rest. We won't rest. We won't rest. We won't rest.
All right. Okay. So I want to give an award to the guy waving the cane.
We will win.
Okay. The guy waving the cane takes that video from an 8.5 to a 10. It's just like it is so comically absurd. And it's like, folks, I'm dunking on you and I'm on your side. That looks fucking ridiculous. And that's not inspiring the truth. So that's one way. You could be lame and incredibly hilarious, or you could go the other route for our other leader in Congress with the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader. I don't know if you guys here. This is Hakeem Jeffries. Let's just put him on here and see what he has to say when they ask him about Elon.
Introducing the Taxpayer Data Protection Act to shield the American people from this out of control power grab permanently, and to make sure that the financial, personal, medical, and confidential information of the American people is protected.
Okay, that is not an out of context clip. That is how Hakeem Jeffries sounds. Okay, every speech he gives, he seems like he is a bored high school vice principal. His eyes are glassy every time he talks. It's like he just wandered into the room. It's like, you are not rallying the troops with this guy. It's not going to happen. I mean, he's like 50-something years old. This is who he is. I mean, I'm sure he's a fine human being or whatever, but he is not leading the charge against Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Charlie Kirk. Like, there's no reason that you can't have people on there actually doing things, because like the Republicans are dunking and memeing shit all the time. And the Republicans figured out what they say doesn't actually need to make sense. It doesn't need to be logical or consistent. It just needs to be red meat for the base. And a good example of this is a ridiculous thing I saw the other day, but I feel like I can say that every day now. But I don't know if you saw this, Cory, but a GOP bill was introduced that would rename Greenland to Red, White, and Blueland. And I saw it here. The bill would also require the federal government to refer to it as such on official maps and documents. And the leaders of Greenland and Denmark, of which Greenland is a territory, have pushed back on the idea of trying to purchase Greenland. Yeah, so that's cartoonish. That is. Do you watch The Boys by any chance?
I haven't, but I'm aware of a good bit of it because my followers have made me aware of a good bit of it.
Okay, well, season 4 of The Boys, like The Boys has always been like a political commentary and mostly anti-right political commentary. Season 4 of The Boys was ridiculous. It was too on the nose, too over the top. I critiqued it the entire season because, Homelander is on trial for killing someone on Fifth Avenue and he's wearing orange underwear. Okay, you guys are... I owe The Boys a serious apology. Because like everything in life is like, oh yeah, it actually is that ridiculous and that absurd. But that's just the thing is like, I'm very upset that the Democrats don't seem to be taking this as seriously as they should, or at least as seriously as they say. Because remember in the wind up to the election, they kept saying how Trump is a fascist, Trump is a Nazi, he's the end of democracy. And that's their response. Like Elon Musk is going into departments and they're writing strongly worded letters to the managers. Like, no, you guys, like if you do an action, like you try to barricade them or they try to barricade you, fight through the barricade, go through. And if they arrest you, fine. You're in Congress. You'll be out of jail in an hour and people will look up to you for trying to do something, because right now they're not having the actions. And if it would be fine if they didn't have the actions, if they at least had the words. They don't even have the words. And I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know what to do about that.
What's so crazy is just like, you look at those two clips, and I mean, the first one seems like an SNL skit. Like that doesn't even seem real. That feels like something that's not even like that didn't like. I'm surprised that even happened in real life. The second one is, I think, a little bit more consistent with what most Democrats look and sound like.
Yes,
Just a bunch of bored bureaucrats just standing there acting like, this is just like business as usual. Hey, we're going to create an act and we're going to try to stop it and blah, 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 blah. That's the same sort of kind of blasé attitude they've had for the last, I think, 10, 20 years that has made it where they're so unpopular among bases that they should be popular with. And then when you look at like the video of Elon Musk in the White House with his kid next to Trump, everything about it was so cringe. Everything about it was so like not
to
quite
us,
as
though. To us,
right? Well, to us, but yeah, not nearly as cringe as what I just saw on the screen. But
you're right.
But still very cringe. Like this guy, like you said, this guy's lame. This guy has no personality. He's saying like, me take over the government. I can't believe that. And it's like, this is so crazy. Like none of these people have any swag. Like Trump has a little bit of swag. Like Trump,
yeah, he does.
Trump can finesse his way through any conversation. Most of it is gibberish. But when Trump wants to, and this is slowing down for him, I've noticed this in the last few years. But when Trump wants to, he can flip something on his head. He can say something just absurdly funny or just ridiculous or insulting that just changes the whole nature of the conversation. There's really not much you can do about it. But Elon Musk does not have that ability. He simply doesn't. JD Vance doesn't have that ability. I don't think anybody really else in his circle has that ability the way Trump has it. And that's kind of maybe the reason why Trump is the one in charge. But it doesn't seem like any Democrat has that ability at all. The only one I can say that might work, and still a lot of work is needed, but I've been noticing an uptick in AOC, her TikToks, her Instagram videos. I remember that they asked AOC, like, are you going to go to the inauguration? And she was just like, well, you know what? I don't really make it a habit of going to the inauguration of rapists. And like the way she said it was just so poignant, and you really didn't expect her to say that. And it's like, oh shit, like okay, that's the energy you need. Like let's go down that road, because she's the only one that I feel like can give it to them as much as they're giving it back. And I don't think she's quite there, but I do think she's at least the only person I can see from a social media standpoint that's even trying to sound like an actual person and to sound these alarms the way they needed to be sounded off, and not just acting like it's business as usual. Because most of the Democrats are either acting like it's business as usual, or as you saw with Schumer, they're trying their hardest to sound like, powerful leaders, and they don't even come close. And a lot of it just has to do with a replacement of leadership. Like the Democrats really need a bottom up, like complete replacement. They need young people. I'm trying to find out, like, where was all this 2020 energy when everybody was out in the streets protesting? Where are all those people at? Like, why aren't they running for offices? Why aren't they running for local, state, and federal positions? Because I don't quite agree with every single aspect of those protests, but I certainly agree with the energy of it. And we need that sort of energy in today's time if we want to defeat Trump, because Trump is not going to get defeated by "we will win" and a guy with a cane. I mean, that was just like, I literally, it didn't feel like a real thing.
No,
and that's not going to work.
It's Simpsons-esque. It is like something the Simpsons would have right there. That's what it reminds me of.
From the Simpsons.
Yeah. That guy actually, his name is Al Green. Like,
yes, Texas. He's from Texas. Yes, I know.
Oh, you know him. So did you?
I'm familiar.
Okay.
Al Green.
All right. So Cory probably knows this, but he has filed impeachment articles against Donald Trump, which Cory, I think, and we talked about last time here, is fucking useless. I saw this. I said, wow, are you kidding me? Trump's third impeachment because people gave a fuck about the first two, right? And it's like, it's indicative or demonstrative of how weak and ineffective and like, in the past, a lot of Democrats' brains are. It's like, oh, this will topple him. This will take care of Donald Trump. And what I wanted to pull out here, you mentioned something I say all the time. I say this and I get so much shit for it every time, but I say it anyway because it's true. And I say that what folks need to realize about Donald Trump is that he's funny. It's like humor is incredibly disarming. Humor is your gateway to 1,000 different conversations. And whenever I bring up the fact that Trump is funny, I get all this pushback of people saying, oh, so you think sexual assault and racism and bigotry is funny? No, that's not what I said. That is not what I said. I was like, Trump, like on an objective reading of the guy, he has great comedic chops, amazing timing. He reads a room like nobody's business. And what I say is, I've never talked to someone who was funny who didn't think Trump was funny. Like, if you're out there telling me you don't think Trump is funny, well, you're probably boring as fuck. Okay, you couldn't tell a joke to save your mother's life. I'm funny. I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I got to take my word for it. And I get that. I'm not saying I like Trump, but I'm saying that he's funny. And a great example of this. Hold on. Great example of this was his assassination attempt, which funny in and of itself, but not through Trump's fault. But the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. Trump was on stage, and the assassination attempt happened. They rushed him off stage. Trump went back to Butler, Pennsylvania a couple months later. He went back, and he went on the same stage and the same location. And when he got up to begin his speech, you know what he said? He said, as I was saying, and then started talking, that is fucking comedy gold. Okay, I don't care if you like Trump or not. That is an amazing joke, and it's like, and it puts the crowd at ease, and it's like, oh yeah, that's right, I was here a little while ago. As I was saying, very funny. And if you don't think that's funny, all right, go to hell. Well, once again, you don't know anything about humor. Oh, go ahead, Cory.
Well, I've been telling people this for years. I could not be a bigger critic of Trump and his policies and the things that he's doing to this country. And I'm very serious a lot of times when I talk about it. But I've been telling people for years. I say this on my lives. I do videos where I imitate him. The dude is funny as hell. He is an extremely funny and entertaining. He comes from the entertainment industry.
Yes.
Like, he is an entertaining individual. I wish he would have stayed in the entertainment industry.
Right, yeah.
I mean, he's an extremely funny and entertaining individual. The funny thing about the Butler, the Pennsylvania joke is that it's actually a copy of a Reagan joke. It's honestly
the Reagan,
a lot better. Yeah. But like when Reagan was, I think he was in Germany, and a balloon popped, sounded like a gunshot, and he was just like, miss me. Mm-hmm. And like the whole crowd's like, oh my God, that's just, and it's not like Eddie Murphy, Dave Chappelle funny, but it's funny enough to where you can like look at that and be like, okay, well, that's not, Hakeem Jeffries couldn't do that.
No.
Schumer couldn't do that, right? Like these people on the Democrat side couldn't save a joke. Now Obama had a very interesting approach to comedy that was a little too intellectual. Like whenever Obama would make a joke, it was always kind of like, I get what you did there, but it always had like this weird, like one of the when he first ran for president, he never really made race a big issue.
Right.
And I remember because I paid very close attention to that election. I was in high school, and I remember there was one time he tried to do a joke. He was like, they're gonna tell you this guy's different. He doesn't look like the guy on your money. He looks a little different from that guy, but and it was kind of like his attempt at like, hey, I can do a joke about the fact that I'm the black guy running for office, but at the same time, it's kind of like, it's a little funny. You're clever, but you just got a little wit to him. But it's not like when Donald Trump was on stage with Jeb Bush, and Jeb Bush said, "My mother is the strongest person I know," and he just said, "She should be running." It's just like, it's great. I almost passed out myself.
That's so great.
Heard that. I'm like, Jesus Christ, they can't do anything. They can't do anything with this guy.
I know, it's like you're fighting. Like most people can't fight in that weight class. They can't do it, and so they had no chance against Trump. There was a time when he was talking about Bloomberg. I don't even know if it was true, but he kept saying, so Bloomberg's a really small guy, and Trump said, I was talking to Bloomberg. He wants to come on stage for the debate. He wants a box to stand on. He wants to stand on a box. He just kept going on to this box. It was hilarious. Now, the Reagan thing, I have long suspected that was set up. I have no proof at all, because I was like, because what made the Reagan joke so good is how impressively quick that was. Because it's like you're right, on his face, it's like a B+ joke, but coming up with it on the spot is impressive. And so I was like, it's a little too impressive. I don't want to get conspiratorial, but because that's something I would do. That is exactly something I would do. Like a lot of times, like when I'm making a speech and I'm telling a joke, I'll purposely slow down my speech and add a couple uhs in there, like I'm thinking of the punchline when I already know what it's going to be, because it's more impressive. They think you thought of it on the spot. And so I was like, okay, as someone who does this type of thing, I can see that happening. But that does make something with Obama pretty impressive. I remember during a State of the Union speech, he said that it was like 2015 or something. And he was talking about the union and like his reflecting on his presidency. And he says, I have no more presidential elections to run. And the Republicans stood up and started cheering when he said that he has no more presidential elections to run. And when they sat down, he said, because I won them both. And that was really great. And which he couldn't have planned that, right? He couldn't have. Yeah. So
he didn't know they were going to do that. Yeah.
He didn't. I guess he could have like, well, if they cheer for that, I'll burn them with this. But it was, on the side. Yeah, it was relying on someone else. So yeah, Obama had it in him. I saw it a few times. And what you said about Trump, you actually mentioned a while ago about how Trump has kind of lost his fastball. People forget how fucking old Trump was or is and what he sounded like in 2016. Because I saw this clip here of when he was running for president the first time. And if this guy had run for president, he would have won 400 electoral college votes. Okay. Like, because Trump is like, he's old and senile now, but this is what he used to sound like. By the way, this is him talking about healthcare. Here we go. Just listen to his policy position, which like makes sense, which is a good one that he obviously wasn't going to do, or how alive he sounded. Because like you forget like what he sounded like 10 years ago, because like that's like 30-40% faster and more coherent than he is today.
Oh yeah, now like, honestly, I'm glad you showed me that, because I forgot about that Trump. Like that Trump back in the day. Oh my God, that's like Celebrity Apprentice of Trump.
Yes,
like, I mean that's super fast, really quick, and if you notice, like every question Scott Pelley's saying, he's got an answer for it in 2 seconds. He's not thinking about it. He's just like flip, and his answers. I mean, granted, universal healthcare would be great. He doesn't really have a plan.
He doesn't know.
He's just saying something, right? Because Scott Pelley says, "Who's gonna pay for it?" He's like, "The government's gonna pay for it, bro." Like you're not even listening. Like he's like, I'm gonna pay for it. Right? What are you talking about? And it's like, but you know, see, he's just bullshitting. He's just pulling something out of his ass. But he's doing it so like quickly and so and in such a clever manner that if you don't understand anything about policy and you don't know what's going on at that time and you watch that, you're like, that guy, I'm going to vote for that guy. Because Hillary would have sat there and said 3 times and had a very slow approach, and her approach would have been a little bit more, you know, reasonable. Like she probably would have said things that were more rational in an actual, you know, possible realm, but it would not have sounded as quick and as punchy as that. And it's crazy to see that, because that is not how Trump sounds today at all. He's much slower. He you know, yes, he's still very, you know, insulting and stuff like that. But as far as his like responses, he could not deliver responses that quick. It's the reason why he doesn't do that many interviews like that anymore. And when he does, they're definitely crafted in a way that makes him look a lot better. And I think people don't understand, like you said, how old Trump is. He is by far the oldest person to ever win an election now. And even older than Biden was when Biden won in 2020. And this is going to be like Reagan's second term. You're going to see Trump slow down even more and even more. And I'm just trying to see it in my head. Like once he hits 80, like how slow is he going to get? And is it going to be just like with Biden, or maybe even worse? Because even Biden, you know, Biden was weird because there were days where they clearly injected something into Biden, because he kind of like, there were days where he was like, he could talk fast, and he had some strength in his voice, and then there were other days where it was like you don't know if he knows what planet he's on. So I think Biden was really going through that good days, bad days type scenario. Whereas Trump seems to be kind of doing a gradual climb, to where it's like he's not having these good or bad days. He's just gradually getting slower and slower and slower. And I don't know where that leads to. You know, well, I do, but I don't know how much of that we see before 2028 or 9, you know. Yeah.
It doesn't speak well for his opposition that, you know, this worst version of Trump is still kicking their ass and everything. And a couple last things real quick here is that you mentioned something that I've been talking about for a while. I saw this interview on the Majority Report with Sam Cedar and Emma Vigeland, and I wish I could remember the name of the guest, but the guest pointed out, and like, you know, the best observations are one that you know, but you haven't really put to words. And he said that the difference between like your modern day Republican politician and Democrat politician is that Republican politicians, like, conservatism means something to them. It either A, they believe that this conservative, vision of America, to return it to this 1840s agrarian society where women are both culturally and legally subservient to men, and it's a white Christian society, like that, they want it. They actually believe this is the best thing for humanity, or they don't care if it's actually good for humanity, but it's definitely good for them. And so it's one of the two, and they fight for it. They act like it. But Democrat politicians seem to get into politics because it's a cool gig. Hey, look at this. It's a job where I get to hang out in Congress and stuff. I get to wear a suit every day. I get to make speeches, and I can play a big, important person, and people will donate money to me. And it's like one sees it as a passion and the other sees it as a job. And I thought that was a great observation because that's exactly what I see. I can't read their minds. I don't know what's in their hearts, but that's why you see fewer people like AOC. Like you don't see a lot of people willing to like go for the jugular. And listen, Republicans are kind of right when they say that Democrats are kind of soft. Like people respect aggression. Like they actually respect the fact that a lot of people will say that, well, Donald Trump, he's a crass, they wouldn't know the word crass. He is a rude and obnoxious person and everything, but he fights for what I believe in. And people respect that. They love it. Like I mentioned on the show that if you ever have a dirty player on your home team, you love that guy. Oh yeah, that guy gets in and throws elbows and breaks rules here and there, but it's in my benefit. And that's why people like Trump a lot. The Democrats could use a lot more of that. Like, there's nothing to be gained by not insulting people anymore. There isn't. I'm sorry. There's not. And that's where I wanted to ask you for the last thing about what the public actually wants. And we alluded to this earlier, talking about how the people aren't really getting a whole lot out of this, like for themselves. And, Trump is, cutting aid to red states and they're happy about it, even though their lives are going to get worse, which is kind of like a consistent theme with red states. It seems it doesn't really matter how bad things get. They still support that. What do the people actually want? And I guess the American populace in general. And I ask you this because I know you do lives and everything. You do your lives really late at night, which like you're in the central time zone. I didn't think about that until today. It's like, yeah, you're central time. So like your lives are at like 1 a.m. or something. I don't know if you can't sleep or whatever, but I imagine it's like a lot of regular folks, tuning in and asking. So I like my people are overwhelmingly leftist, or then occasionally, because I do more politically charged stuff than yours. But I imagine you get more regular folks chiming in. Like, what are they saying from what you've seen?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I do lives really late because I'm just so busy during the day. I have a kid and he just like won't go to sleep until like 9 o'clock. And so like, I can't get to it till later in the day, but I would love to start doing them a little bit earlier. But that's a great question. And before I quit answer it, I just want to say about the people love the dirty player on their team. The Democrats need a Draymond Green, man.
Yes.
They need a Draymond. They need a Draymond bet more than anybody I've ever seen. Like they would. And the Draymond is like hated by every other team. But if you're a Bay Area Warriors fan, then you love them.
Yeah.
You want someone like that who's going to do the dirty work to get the job done. So yeah, 100%. But to answer your question, what do people want? I think it's complicated. I think so. I think America is such a diverse place as far as just not even just like with culture and stuff, but just with ideas and with just beliefs and value systems. That I think it really depends on who you're asking. And I also think that there's a lot of Americans who don't know what they want, who think they know what they want, but they aren't 100% sure what they want or how to get it. I think ultimately, if I'm speaking for most just working class, 90% of Americans, I think they want to be able to make a decent living and be able to have their paycheck, cover everything they need to cover, be able to have the occasional vacation, the off days, the leisurely time, their entertainment, their media, all that stuff, and not have to worry about, big picture issues, not have to worry about whether or not the economy is going to collapse or, climate change is going to wipe them out or some major war is going to happen. I mean, that's like the ideal thing, right? To be in a peaceful, productive society where you can work a job, you can make a living, provide for your family, that, and the other. The problem is, I don't know how many Americans even fit into that, that paradigm anymore, because it really seems like there are so many, like you said, as we said, it's kind of like going back to the very beginning of the conversation, so many single people and so many people who don't have kids or don't have families. And it's like, well, if you're single, is that as important to you? This idea of, I just want to be able to provide for my family. What if you want more? And what if you want something that conflicts with what other people want? And it seems like on the conservative side of things, a lot of them have been just brainwashed to think that all they really need out of life is to see the other side suffer.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this. Like, it seems like they're cheering for, they banned trans athletes from college sports, and they're taking all this funding away from education and all these different things, and they're going to cancel food stamps and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, yeah, but that doesn't improve your life in any way. All that does is make someone else suffer. And it's someone that you don't even know, but someone that you think you're at odds with because social media, the internet, or whatever has convinced you that you're at odds with these people.
Yep.
Most of these people, you don't even have any contact with them whatsoever. And so I think on the right, there just has to be, I don't know how you get here, a deprogramming of when are you going to see how much you're losing just so somebody else can lose? Right? Like that doesn't make any sense. I mean, farmers, for instance, there's this new TikToker that I'm following who's a farmer who's talking about like all the farm aid that's about to get cut. And it's like, this is going to literally adversely affect the people who voted for Trump the most, or at least people who are among the groups that voted for him the most. So it's like, when are we going to get to a point where you see that that's just not a thing anymore? Like, you shouldn't really destroy your own things that benefit you, your own benefits, just to see somebody else suffer. As for the left, I think with the left, a lot of the things that they want are, just meaningful. Like, they just want to see everybody be treated equally. They want fairness in society. They want to see the economy become fairer. And they've got to get a little bit more fiery about actually getting it, because right now there just isn't. It's like you're saying all these things online. You want all these things, but like, what are you doing to get it? Like, what are we actually doing to get it, other than just posting about it, other than being angry about it? How are we organizing? I mean, and all this thing about, well, the politicians suck. Okay, we'll run for office. I mean, it's very difficult to win like a House seat, maybe a senator seat, but a state rep seat, I mean, that's not that difficult. Figure out how to do it in your own hometown and just go for it. And even if you lose, you can use it as a way to get leverage on social media to at least get people to notice you and get people to notice your message. Because sometimes, I mean, Lincoln lost elections, Obama lost elections, and they still ended up being incredible leaders after the fact. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes you have to lose in order to even get your name out there in the first place. So that's what we need: more organizing, more people who actually care about it and who are actually going to do actionable things in real life instead of just complaining about it online. And as far as what America wants in general, I think it's just so diverse. I think it's all over the place.
Yeah, I agree. I'll go in reverse order, which talk about there about like what people want on the left and what they actually do. Like the complaining in front of your phone is easy. Like that's easy. Like anyone can sit and bitch about how bad things are. But this is also, I hate, giving credit to right wingers, whatever, but they have been putting in the fucking work. Okay. That you can't say what you want about them. They are not lazy when it comes to their politics. And they're like, when an election happens, they show the fuck up. They like, you go to a right-wing Christian nationalist church. Every fucking one of them are going to not just like the presidential elections. They're going to off-year elections. They're going to state rep elections. They're going to school board elections. They are always there. We don't have that. We don't. Like, we look at the sexy stuff and everything. Running is a little bit more difficult, I think, because I think I did just showing up and voting, and moving. Since I saw a great video saying that, it's not just that Democrats are, soft because like they're like they're right wingers in their hearts or whatever, but right wingers keep winning elections, which moves the Overton window to the right every time more right wing people win elections. So like running for office might be a little tricky because state reps don't make anything. Like you also need money because state reps make like $25,000 a year. Like most of them have money already trying to get there, but nothing's stopping you from supporting them. And Trump and the Republicans, you mentioned this, how they hurting the left is more important than helping the right. That's another thing we can learn from Trump or Republicans is that you need to give people an enemy. You do. Like they've made it very clear that their enemy list is 100 miles long, but ours is like focus on the billionaires, the 1%, the people who are actually hurting us. Don't be like the new chairman of the Democrat National Committee saying they're good billionaires and shit like that. But and what people want, it is a hard question to answer, which I saved it for the end because it is kind of the sad thing is, honestly, I don't know if it's sad, but it's the reality that we've been focusing so much in our minds about like this concept of democracy, of our constitutional republic, and that our democratic rule, how it's important that power is derived from the just consent of the governed and everything. But people, when you get right down to it, they don't actually want democracy. They don't. What people want, they want to be safe. They want to be successful and they want to be happy. And if you can guarantee them that without the democracy part, they'll take it. Like, sure, yeah, if I'm like free to do what I want to do and I'm safe and I'm comfortable and I'm happy, they will take it 10 out of 10 times. We got to reckon with that. And once again, I'm not saying overturn democracy, but you have to address what people actually want. Yelling about democracy, till you're blue in the face clearly doesn't work. You need to actually address the thing that people want. So, all right. So kept you a little long there, Cory, but I appreciate it. Thank you so much, man. Where can the good folks find your work as if they don't already know?
Well, This is Cory on most platforms. You can find me on TikTok. That's where I do a lot of my skits about history and political satire. So This is Cory on TikTok. I'm This is Cory 91 on Instagram. And I'm also This is Cory on YouTube. And those are like the main places you can find my work. And TJ, it's always fun to talk to you, man. I always have a blast having these conversations with you. Happy to talk anytime.
Perfect. Thanks so much, man. And thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks.
Oh.